They told me to step aside, at a bank I owned 58% of, on the floor my father had waxed for 31 years. The deposit was cleared, lawful, mine. But it had triggered enhanced verification for elevated risk profiles, a policy that lived in no manual, in no drawer, in no building on this earth. A wall Gregory Mahler had learned to spell professionally. Down the counter, a 71-year-old veteran was told his $600 check needed review too. Same amount, same date, every month for as long as he could remember. His granddaughter needed it. The smile never moved. I set my portfolio on the counter. I didn't open it yet. Because I hadn't come to make a deposit. I'd come to watch them build that wall one more time, on one more person, with my own eyes, before I tore it down with what was inside, but to understand why I'd come, why the woman who owned the building was standing at window 4 like a stranger, and what was in the portfolio I hadn't opened yet. You have to go back 8 months. To a room that didn't match the size of what I was building. It was a 3rd-floor walk, up above a print shop on the east side of Carrowmore, 2 rooms and a kettle. The radiator knocked. The window looked out on a parking lot in the back of a laundromat, and in the late afternoon the light came in flat and gray and honest. My desk was a fold-down table I'd bought second-hand for $41. My chair tilted left. On the wall behind me, where another person might have hung a degree and I had several, I taped a single sheet of printer paper with 4 words on it in my own handwriting. Let the record speak. The numbers of my life that year were small and exact. Rent on the office, $9.20 a month. The bus I still took to work 3 days a week because parking downtown ran $280 a month, and I'd rather give that to the fund. My own apartment, $1,100. A car with 191,000 miles on it that I kept alive on principal and $40 repairs. That spring, I had a personal checking balance that twice dipped under $400, not because I was poor exactly, but because nearly everything I controlled, I'd pointed somewhere else. My phone rang one evening while I was eating cereal standing up at the counter. My cousin, Renard. His daughter's deposit for a community college program was due Friday, $310, and his hours had been cut and he was short. He hadn't called to ask. He called to talk himself out of asking. I listened for about 90 seconds, then said, "It's already done. Send me the school's portal link." I didn't hesitate, I never had, with that kind of thing. Money that moved toward a young person learning something was money doing exactly what my father had told me it was for. The fund was the thing that ate the rest of me. Carter Community Capital was 4 years old, and almost nobody had heard of it, which was by design. It had started as a single spreadsheet and a question I'd asked at a conference and gotten a non-answer to. Why do depositors who look like the neighborhood get treated like a risk to it? The fund pooled money, small checks from teachers and pastors and 2 retired ball players, and one foundation that asked not to be named and larger. Quieter commitments I'd spent years earning in rooms where I was the only person who looked like me. By that spring, it was not small anymore. It was a controlling position, painstakingly assembled in the holding company that sat above a regional bank, Meridian First. I had not built it to own a building. I built it because I'd run the data myself 3 times, refusing to believe it. The first 2, the deposit holds the additional verification. The loan denials that clustered by zip code in a way no risk model could honestly explain. The institution wasn't broken. It was working precisely as habit had built it. And the only way I'd ever found to change a system that believed it was already fair was to be holding the deed when the conversation started. There were costs I didn't talk about. 8 years of a marriage that ended partly because I gave Saturdays to the fund instead of to it. A consulting career I'd let go cold. The $41 table. A father I visited less than I wanted to because the work was the work. The day the results came was a Wednesday. The email landed at 10:43 in the morning. I would remember the timestamp because I'd need it later. State Banking Commission. Regarding the change in control application, Meridian First Holdings. Approved, pending the final certification filing. 58%. Confirmed. In writing. With a seal. I did not call anyone. I did not pour a drink or cry or post a thing. I set the phone face down and I sat with the flat gray light for a moment, and then I opened a new document and started a list because the approval was not the finish line. It was the starting gun, and 3 clocks had just begun to run at once. The first clock was the filing. The certification that would make me the incoming chair of record had to reach the commission by 4:30 in the afternoon on a single, specific Tuesday, the only window the commission had opened before its next quarter. Miss it, and the whole change in control review reset by 60 days, and the sitting board, the one that had built the habits I intended to end, would have 60 days and every reason to challenge the transfer. The second clock was public. I was scheduled to give the keynote at the City Economic Equity Summit that same evening, 7 in the evening, live-streamed 8 months in the planning. I'd earned that stage by being right about things people hadn't wanted to hear. I was not going to stand on it, having quietly failed the test of my own thesis that very afternoon. The third clock was the one that mattered most and counted for nothing on any ledger. 6:30 that same evening, my father's retirement ceremony, 31 years of overnight custodial shifts, most of them at the Halden Street branch of Meridian First. The same building. The same floor he'd waxed at 3 in the morning while the deposits of a whole neighborhood sat behind glass he wasn't allowed to stand on the customer side of. I'd promised him I'd be there. I had never once, in my life, been late to anything that was for him. The math of that Tuesday was simple and brutal. 1 body, 1 afternoon, 3 deadlines stacked on top of each other like floors in a building I now owned, but had never once been treated like I belonged inside. And there was a 4th thing on my list, the one no spreadsheet would have told me to do. Before any of it, before the filing, before the stage, before the ceremony, I was going to walk into the Halden Street branch as an ordinary customer with an ordinary deposit, give my real name, and see with my own eyes what happened to a woman who looked like me when she asked that bank to simply do its job. I needed to see it before I fixed it. I needed to be in the room. I put on the charcoal coat. I was 11 years old. It was a Thursday in February, and it was snowing, the kind of snow that doesn't stick, just turns the streetlights into smudges. My father, Walter Carter, had taken me with him on his shift because the sitter had fallen through and a girl could do her homework in the break room of a bank as well as anywhere. And he was not a man who left a problem for someone else to hold. I remember the smell of the floor wax most of all. Sharp and waxy and a little sweet, the smell of a building being put right while the world that used it slept. I remember his uniform, gray, pressed, his name stitched in red cursive over the pocket, Walter, and the soft jangle of the ring of keys at his hip that opened every door in that building except the ones that mattered. He had keys to the vault corridor. He did not have a chair at any desk. He cleaned the side of the counter the customers never stood on. That night, around 2 in the morning, mopping near the night deposit slot, he found an envelope on the floor. Thick. It had slipped, I suppose, from someone's coat or someone's hand at closing. A small business deposit, the kind a person carries when they don't trust the slot. $1,900 in cash. A whole month for some family, maybe 2. I watched my father from the break room doorway, 11 years old, and I watched him do a strange thing. He did not put it in his pocket, which no camera in that building was pointed at him to prevent. He did not slide it under the manager's door and walk away, which would have been faster. He sat down at the night supervisor's desk, a chair he was not, strictly speaking, supposed to sit in, and he wrote a full account, the time he found it, the exact spot, the amount, counted twice and noted. He found the night shift guard and had him sign as a witness. He photographed the envelope where it lay before he touched it on a little disposable camera he kept in his cart because he told me later, people will believe a clean record from a man they would not believe out loud. He did not say, be honest. He did not say, they will doubt you, so be twice as careful. He didn't make a speech. He just built the record, calm and complete, at 2 in the morning for money that would never be his and a bank that would never once let him stand on the customer side of the glass. In the morning, the deposit was returned to a frightened small business owner who never knew the janitor's name. There was no thank you. Walter hadn't done it for one. That lesson didn't leave me. It became the architecture of everything I built after. Not the honesty alone, the method. Don't argue with a system that has already decided what you are. Don't raise your voice because they have a name ready for your voice. Build the record. Make it clean enough and complete enough and time-stamped enough that the truth no longer needs your permission or theirs to be believed. Let the paper do the talking, because the paper is the one thing in the room they were never able to look past you and ignore. It was why I became an economist instead of an activist, though I was both. It was why the funds files were immaculate, every transfer documented, every approval sealed and dated. It was why, on the wall of a $41 office, I'd taped 4 words where other people hang their pride. Let the record speak. And it was why today, of all days, the lesson would be tested to its very edge. Because in a few minutes I was going to walk into the building my father had kept clean for 31 years. The building I now owned. A controlling share of a fact not 3 people alive knew. And I was going to let a man invent a policy to my face. I was not going to argue. I was not going to announce myself. I was going to let him build his record in front of witnesses in his own words on his own clock. And then, when it was complete, I was going to set mine beside it. The Halden Street branch smelled like every bank in the country, carpet, toner, the faint cold of money. I came through the glass doors at 3:48 in the afternoon and let them sigh shut behind me. And for a moment I just stood on the customer side of a counter my father had only ever cleaned from the other side, and I let myself feel the whole weight of that without letting it touch my face. The banker at window 4 looked up and smiled, and the smile was real. Denise Park, the name tag said. Maybe 35, tired around the eyes in the specific way of someone good at a job inside a place that doesn't deserve them. Afternoon, Denise said. What can I do for you today? A deposit, I said, and slid my check and my identification across the counter, plain as anything, and I'd like it available today, if the timing allows. I know it's close to cutoff. Denise glanced at the amount, and her eyebrows did a small, polite climb, not alarm, just attention. It was a large check, drawn on a clearing account, made out to Yvette Carter, every figure on it legitimate and every signature real. Sure thing, Denise said, already typing. Let me just run it through, shouldn't be a problem. It was 3:51. The wire desk closed at 4:30. There was time, and we both knew there was time, and for about 90 seconds it was the most ordinary transaction in the world. Then Gregory Mahler walked over. He hadn't been called. That was the thing I noted and filed and did not say. He'd been at his desk across the floor, and he'd seen the screen at window 4 over Denise's shoulder, or seen the customer, or seen some private arithmetic of his own. And he'd stood up and crossed the floor on his own initiative the way he'd crossed it 1,000 times. Gregory Mahler did not think of himself as a man who singled people out. He would have told you, and believed it, that he was a man who caught things. 30 years of catching things. A clean compliance record he wore like a medal. He had a sense, he'd have said, for when a transaction didn't sit right, and he trusted that sense the way you trust your own hand. And he had simply never once in 3 decades stopped to ask why his hand always seemed to land on the same kind of shoulder. Let me take a look at this one, he said to Denise, not unkindly, easing in front of her keyboard. He read the screen. He looked at me, the coat, the portfolio, the face, and something in him settled into a decision he would have sworn up and down was about the money. Ma'am, a deposit of this size on an account with this profile is going to need additional review. We have an enhanced source of funds verification step for elevated risk profiles. Just a precaution. There it was. The sentence with no home in any manual. The fence, one plank at a time. When a man builds his whole sense of himself on being careful, and the system has quietly taught his carefulness exactly where to point, is he lying when he calls it a precaution? Or is the more frightening answer that he isn't lying at all? I didn't tense. I didn't sigh. I tilted my head a fraction, the way I did across boardroom tables when someone said a number I already knew was wrong. I'd be glad to help you verify, I said. Can you tell me the policy number? I'd like to read the provision you're citing, since you mentioned it's a defined step. It was 4:02 now, 28 minutes to the wire cutoff. The first clock, ticking under everything, though only I could hear it. Gregory's smile held, but it changed temperature. It's an internal risk protocol, ma'am. It's not something we hand out. I see, I said, mild. And the funds, the check has cleared the originating bank. You can see that on your screen there. I nodded at it, not touching it. So, the hold isn't about whether the money is good, it's about verifying its source. Is that right? I want to make sure I understand what you're telling me so I can give you exactly what you need. I was not arguing. Anyone watching would have called me cooperative, even warm. But every question was a stake driven into the ground, neat and level. Name the policy. Confirm the funds cleared. State the actual reason on the record. I wasn't trying to win the moment, I was collecting it. I was building in his own answers, the clean and complete account of a thing that did not exist, and he was helping me one confident sentence at a time. Because men like Gregory Mahler had never in their lives been asked to write down precisely what they meant. It's standard, he said again, which was the third time, and which was not an answer, and which I let stand without correction. And then I saw it. Over his shoulder, on the screen Denise had half turned, a small notation sat in the account margin, a flag applied not 3 minutes ago with a code in it. I'd spent 8 months in the holding company's compliance architecture. I knew that code. It was not a fraud flag. It was not a sanctions flag. It was a manual override, the kind a branch officer enters by hand, and beside it, where the system asked for a documented reason. Someone had typed a single word that the bank's own auditors would one day have to explain. I read it. I did not blink. I did not point. I just let my eyes return to Gregory's face, calm as still water in a glass, and I said, "All right, tell me what you'd need to release it and how long the review takes." Because the record wasn't finished yet, and I had time. For now, I still had time. He came in out of the cold at 4:11, and the doors sighed for him the way they had sighed for me. 71, maybe more. A veteran's windbreaker, navy, a unit patch on the shoulder worn pale at the threads, a flat tweed cap he took off the moment he was indoors, because some men were raised to do that and never unlearned it. His hands were the story, big, careful, a tremor in the left. He was working to keep still by holding his cap with both. He moved to the open window with the slow dignity of a man who has decided that being slow is not the same as being less. His name, he told the teller, was Mr. Elias Boone. His voice was soft and a little hoarse. He had a check to deposit, $600, his veteran's benefit, same as every month, he said, for longer than the girl at the window had been alive. He needed $300 of it today, in cash, because his granddaughter's insulin copay was due, and the pharmacy didn't wait, and she was at home, and she was 9. The teller started to help him. And then the same thing happened that had happened to me, because it was the same machine and it had been built to run this way. A flag. A pause. A reason produced from the air. Additional verification on the account. A standard precaution. The funds would need to be held. Different words from a different mouth, but the same fence, the same height, the same family of person it always seemed to keep on the cold side of. Gregory Mahler was 8 feet away. He heard all of it. He did not walk over. He did not need to. The machine was doing what he had taught it to do, and a man who has taught a machine well does not have to lift a finger to be the reason. Mr. Boone said quietly that he'd been coming here since the branch opened. He said his granddaughter needed it. He said please once, and then he stopped saying it because a man only says that word so many times before something in him decides it costs too much. I watched from window 4. I did not move yet. But everything in me had gone very still and very clear. Here was the arithmetic, and I ran it the way I ran everything, fully, honestly, no flinching. It was 4:13, the certification filing closed at 4:30. 17 minutes. If I stepped out of my own careful half-built record now, if I made myself the center of a scene, the branch would seize on it, and the afternoon I'd engineered for 8 months could slip past 4:30. And the sitting board would get its 60 days. There was the 7 o'clock summit, the live stream stage, the keynote built on the very thesis I was now standing inside. There was the 6:30 ceremony, my father, 31 years, his name in red cursive, a chair I'd promised to fill, and there was the fund itself, 8 months and 4 years, and a marriage and 1,000 quiet rooms, all of it balanced on the next 17 minutes going exactly to plan. Speaking now risked every clock at once. The clean move, the smart move, the move the spreadsheet would bless, was to hold my record, make my filing win the whole war by 4:30, and come back for Mr. Boone tomorrow with the power to fix it for everyone and forever. When you have the documents in your bag to make it right later, for everyone, does that buy you the right to stay silent now, while a man with a tremor in his hand is told no 8 feet away? Or is later just the most respectable word a comfortable person ever invented? I looked down at my phone. 3 messages stacked all arrived in the last minute, each one a clock with a voice. I looked back up. Mr. Boone had put his cap back on. He was turning to go. And as he turned, he did a small thing. He reached out and steadied himself for half a second against the counter's edge, that tremoring left hand flat on the wood, just to be sure of his feet before he walked back out into the cold, $300 short of his granddaughter's medicine. It was nothing. It was a man making sure he wouldn't fall. And it was the thing that made staying still impossible. I set my portfolio down at window 4. I did not explain it to Denise. I did not announce it to the room. I simply turned and walked, unhurried, across the floor toward the old man and the open window, and I did not look at the clock as I went. Denise Park watched me go and understood, in her stomach, that this was the point past which the afternoon could not be folded back up. Her lips parted. There was a thing she could have said, "Sir, wait," or "Mr. Mahler, that's not actually a true thing," a thing she had known for 9 years. She had said it in her head 100 times. She closed her mouth. She let it stay in her head, where it had always been safe and always been useless. Her silence, too, was a choice. She would carry that. She did not know yet how long. "Sir," I said to Mr. Boone gently, "stay a moment, let's sort this out together." Gregory was already moving. 4:15. He had a sense for a scene forming, and his instinct, honed over 30 years, was to get out ahead of the narrative before it set. "Ma'am, you're going to need to step back. This is a separate customer's private matter." "It's the same matter," I said, even, unhurried. That was when his temperature broke, not into rage, into procedure, which for a man like Gregory was the same thing wearing a tie. He turned and signaled the security guard near the door. 4:16. "We're going to need to clear window 4, he said, loud enough now to reach the line, loud enough to be heard, because a man setting a record wants witnesses too. I have a customer refusing to step aside and interfering with another transaction." 4:17. He reached past Denise and entered something on her terminal, and the screen at window 4 changed. My pending deposit went from under review to access restricted, the override deepening, a second-hand typed flag stacking on the first. He was freezing me out of my own money in real time, and he was doing it with the flat, busy face of a man who believed he was protecting the institution from me. Every move he made looked reasonable from inside the machine. Clear the window, crowd management. Call the guard, customer safety, restrict the account, risk containment, speak loudly, transparency. Each plank alone was something he could defend in a hearing. It was only when you stood back and saw the whole fence and saw who was always on the far side of it, that the shape of the thing became impossible to call anything but what it was. By the brochure rack, the woman with the phone had stopped pretending. She was filming openly now, both hands framing the counter. The guard came toward Mr. Boone first, by reflex, and the old man stepped back and lowered his head, and that small surrender was the worst thing in the room. My phone buzzed in my coat, all 3 at once now, insistent. I glanced down, once, and read them where they sat. From my attorney, "Commission portal locks at 4:30 hard. Need your electronic signature now." After that, it's 60 days. "Where are you?" From the summit director, "You're on at 7, press is here, front row is full, tell me you're coming." From my father, "Took my good suit out of the plastic, 6:30. Don't rush, baby, but don't be late. Love you." I read all 3. I did not answer one. It was 4:26, 4 minutes, the smallest the clock would get in the whole of that day. By every measure I'd ever trusted, this was the moment it all came apart. The filing slipping away the stage, emptying the guard's hand near an old man's elbow, my own account locked. My plan dying 4 minutes early on the floor my father had waxed for 31 years. I thought of the plastic over the suit. I thought of him taking it off, careful, the way he was careful about everything, smoothing the shoulders, getting ready to be honored in the one building that had never once let him stand where I was standing now. When the clock says you have 4 minutes to save everything you built, and a man is being walked to the door 8 feet away, which promise are you actually keeping by staying silent? And which one are you breaking that you'll never be able to file a record to fix? Behind me, Gregory had picked up the desk phone. He spoke low into it, half-turned, but not low enough. "Yeah, I've got a situation at the branch. A customer won't comply. I'm going to need her account frozen pending a full review." No, I don't have the documentation in front of me, but trust me, I know the type. I know the type. I heard it, every syllable. I did not turn around, I did not flinch. Something in my face simply went quiet and final, the way a door does when it's done swinging and settles into the frame. I set my worn leather portfolio on the counter, I unzipped it, and I opened my laptop. I didn't say a word first. That was the thing people would remember when they described it later, that I didn't announce anything, didn't clear my throat, didn't say, "You have no idea who I am." I simply opened the laptop, tapped twice, and at 4:27 I electronically signed a single document and pressed send. The attorney's portal would log it, filed, 3 minutes to spare, clock 1, stopped. I did it the way another person checks a parking meter, a small, finished motion, no triumph in it at all. Then I turned the screen toward Gregory Mahler. "Before you freeze my account," I said, "you should read this. I think it changes what you'd want to do next." On the screen was a document on the letterhead of the State Banking Commission. I let him look at it. I did not narrate it for him. I let his own eyes do the work, the way my father had let the night supervisor's eyes do the work, over a clean handwritten account at 2 in the morning. "That's a notice of approved change in control," I said, when his face told me he'd reached the bottom of it. "Filed against Meridian First Holdings, the company that owns this branch, your desk, and the chair you're standing next to. The acquiring entity is the Carter Community Capital Fund. The controlling interest is 58%. The Commission's approval is stamped 10:43 this morning. The certification that made it final was filed from this counter 4 minutes ago at 4:27 on the laptop you are looking at." I paused. I let his brain catch up. You could watch it arrive in stages. "What that means, Mr. Mahler, is that as of this afternoon, I am the incoming chair of the institution you have spent the last 19 minutes protecting for me. The account you flagged is mine. The money you held is mine, and the branch you run reports through 4 people to me." My voice never rose. There was no edge of victory in it. I spoke the way you read terms of a contract aloud to make sure both parties understand what they've electronically signed. I tapped again. A second document. "This is the part that matters more than I do," I said. "It's an independent audit. 18 months of this branch's deposit holds and verification flags by account. Read the pattern. Customers from 3 zip codes, I'll let you guess which 3, were placed under additional review at 4 times the rate of everyone else for deposits that cleared at the same rate as everyone else. Same documents, same outcomes when reviewed. 4 times the holds. The flags were entered manually. Many of them were entered by you. The reason field, where the system asks why, was left blank or filled with one word. I didn't say which word. I didn't have to. He had typed it himself 3 minutes earlier into my account. This isn't about today, Mr. Mahler. Today is just the day someone was finally standing in the room with the data and the authority to act on it. He found his voice, and it came out the only place it could. You set this up. You planned all of this. You came in here to... I came in here, I said, and asked to make a lawful deposit and asked you to follow your own policy. That's all I did. Everything after that you chose. You chose it 8 feet from an old man, and you set it into a phone, and there are 9 other people in this room who watched you choose it. I didn't write your part, I just kept the record. I turned then to Denise, who had gone pale, whose 9 years were sitting on her face all at once. Reverse the hold on my account and on Mr. Boone's right now. Then pull every flagged account from the last 18 months and start a release review on each one. You know how. You've always known how. No judgment in it. No absolution either. Just the work, handed to the one person on the floor who'd known the truth and swallowed it, because the work was the only thing that could begin to weigh against the swallowing. And then I turned to the old man. "Mr. Boone, I'm sorry you had to stand here for that. I opened my banking app, my own, ordinary, on my own phone, and I did not call a supervisor and did not fill out a form and did not ask a single person's permission. I moved $300 to him, then $600 more, then closed the app. 90 seconds, start to finish. Your deposit's clearing now. The 300's already in. Go get your granddaughter's medicine. And when you come back next month, you walk up to any window in this building and you are never reviewed again." His tremoring hand came up and pressed flat against his own chest, over the unit patch, and he didn't say thank you because some things are too big for it. He just nodded, Once, the slow, dignified nod of a man who has been seen and put his cap back on. I closed the laptop. I looked, last, at Gregory. Fairness isn't only a moral principle, Mr. Mahler. In modern banking, it's a competitive advantage. Institutions that treat people like a risk lose those people and their children and their businesses to the first competitor who doesn't. The branches that treat people with dignity outperform the ones that run on assumptions. That's not idealism. It's on a spreadsheet, and I'll show it to you if you're still here to see it. I glanced at the clock above the door. 4:29. The whole reveal had cost me 90 seconds and 1 minute of margin I'd never needed. 2 clocks left, and both of them, for once, on my side. The line at the counter had gone silent. People do that when they realize they've been standing inside something. A man near the back slowly lowered the phone he'd raised. 2 tellers who had spent years not quite looking at the holds they processed now looked at each other instead. A young mother near the front pulled her son a little closer, not from fear, from the instinct to make sure he had seen it. Gregory Mahler sat down. Not in a chair he chose, into the nearest one, the way a man sits when his knees make the decision for him. He did not shout, he did not weep. He stared at the dark laptop where the seal had been, and you could see the thing arriving in him in slow tide. The long, cold understanding that the carefulness he'd worn like a medal for 30 years had a shape, and the shape had a direction, and the direction had finally been written down by someone who would not be talked past. He had always believed the record would clear him. He had simply never imagined being the one it described. Denise Park's hands shook as she worked. But she worked. She reversed the hold on Mr. Boone's account, then on mine, and then she opened the flagged accounts queue, 18 months of it, longer than she'd let herself look, and she began, one file at a time. There were tears on her face and she did not wipe them, because wiping them would have meant stopping, and she had stopped once already for 9 years, and she was done with stopping. She would carry the silence still. You don't put a thing like that down. But she had finally picked up the other end of it. Mr. Boone walked out into the cold without looking back, and through the glass, we watched him stop on the sidewalk, take out an old flip phone, and make a call to a pharmacy or to a girl of 9. Or to both. Whoever answered, he was smiling when he started to talk. The woman by the brochure rack looked down at her phone, at the 11 minutes of video she'd caught, and made a decision about it that she would act on before she reached her car. I put my laptop back in the soft-cornered portfolio. I buttoned the charcoal coat. I did not make a speech to the room, and I did not look back at Gregory, because the record was complete now and the record did not need me to gloat over it. I walked out the same doors I'd come in through, onto the sidewalk my father had walked past at the end of 10,000 shifts. And the thing in my head, the only thing, was not the 58% and not the audit and not the look on Gregory Mahler's face. It was 6:30, the good suit out of its plastic, a chair with my name on it. I took out my phone and called him. He picked up on the second ring, the way he always did. Dad, I said, I'm on my way. 3 months later. Denise Park still works at the Halden Street branch. She asked to stay, which surprised people, because the easy thing, the forgivable thing, would have been to transfer somewhere the walls didn't remember. Instead, she stayed. And she did the harder thing. She built the form, a 1-page release review protocol now used at every branch in the network that requires any officer placing a verification hold to type a specific documentable reason into a field that can no longer be left blank, and to flag it for second review within the hour. She wrote it on her own time. She named it nothing. There's no credit on it. Some afternoons, she still looks at the spot by window 4, where an old man steadied himself against the counter, and her chest goes tight and she lets it. Because she has decided that the weight is hers to keep carrying, and that carrying it is the only honest thing left to do with it. Gregory Mahler was not fired that afternoon. That isn't how it went, and the story is more true for it. There was a process. An independent review of 18 months of branch records took 11 weeks. It found what my audit had found, and more. A pattern stretching back further than today's data could prove, the kind of pattern no single decision explains and every decision built. He was given the findings in writing. He was given the chance to respond. In the end, he was removed from any role with deposit authority, not as vengeance, but as the plain consequence the record finally made unavoidable. The system that had let him point his carefulness in one direction for 30 years was, at last, made to look at where it pointed. That is not a happy ending. It is something rarer. It is the machine, for once, working the way it always claimed to. Mr. Elias Boone banks at the same branch. His granddaughter is doing fine. Her insulin is a standing auto transfer now, set up by Denise herself, that no policy will ever touch. He stops in sometimes even when he has nothing to deposit, just to sit a minute in the warm. Last month he was there when a young woman in scrubs got placed under additional review, and before anyone on staff could move the new protocol, caught it and cleared it in under 4 minutes. And Mr. Boone watched the whole thing not happen and tipped his cap to no one in particular and went home. The branch itself looks the same and is not the same. In 3 months, verification holds in the 3 zip codes that had carried 4 times the rate fell to within a fraction of the branch average. Reason field completion went from 61% to 100%. New account openings in those neighborhoods rose 31%. 2 small businesses that had been turned away the previous year came back and were approved. Deposits at the branch are up 9%. None of it is a poster on the wall. It is in the ledger, which is the only place change ever survives. The video ran 11 minutes and was seen 9 million times. It did the thing those videos rarely do. It outlived its own week. A state senator cited it on the floor. A subcommittee opened hearings on deposit hold disparities, and 2 other regional banks quietly audited themselves before anyone could audit them first. A bill with an unglamorous name, the Deposit Fairness and Disclosure Act, is, as of this telling, in committee. I don't run the branch. I don't run any of them day to day. I hired a chief operating officer for that, a woman I trust, and got out of her way. I'm chair. I sit where the board sits, which means I spend my time on the architecture, not the counter, rewriting the rules that taught 1,000 Gregorys where to point. I'm building the next fund now, aimed at lending in the same neighborhoods the holds used to choke. As for 6:30 that night, I made it. I sat in the second row in a dress my father said was too nice for a janitor's party, and I watched them call his name 31 years, and I clapped until my hands hurt. And I did not tell him that night what I'd done 4 hours earlier, 8 feet from where he used to mop. I told him a week later, over Sunday dinner. He was quiet a long moment. Then he said, "You kept the record, and that was the only trophy I wanted. What I kept from that day isn't the win. It's a question I can't put down. The one that found me on the sidewalk, in the cold, the only owner that bank ever had who'd also been the daughter of the man who waxed its floors." So here is what the story proves. Systems can change, accountability can win, dignity is not just a nice word for a brochure. It is measurable, it shows up in a ledger, it can be built into a 1-page form and survive long after the cameras leave. Something good happened on Halden Street. It was real. Don't let anyone tell you it wasn't. But the story proves something harder to celebrate too, and it would be a lie to end without saying it. I won because I owned the building. I walked out whole because I had a 58% controlling stake and a commission seal stamped 1043 that morning in the bag on my shoulder. The audit existed because I had the money to commission it and the authority to act on it. Strip those away, leave me in the charcoal coat with nothing in the portfolio but a good check and the truth, and I'm just another customer being told to step aside, and the video, if anyone bothers to film it, is seen by no one. I did not beat the wall, I owned it. What about everyone who doesn't? How many systems only change when someone with power happens to feel, firsthand, the thing they let everyone else feel for years? How many people walk up to that same counter every single day with nothing in their bag but a lawful request, and the truth, no fund, no seal, no leverage to make the room go quiet, and get told additional review and go home short and never become a story at all? And what does it say about us, that the story we share 9 million times is the one that ends in a reveal, when the ones that end in silence outnumber it by 10,000 to 1? There's no clean answer to that, and offering you one would be its own kind of policy invented to make a wall look like a kindness. So here is the only true thing to end on. Most days the record does not speak for the people who need it most, because no one in the room has the standing to read it aloud. I spent a fortune to buy myself that standing. The work, the real work, the work that outlasts any one reveal, is building a world where no one should have to. At Unsilenced, we don't soften the emotion or dilute the message. We tell powerful fictional stories inspired by real-world issues that too many people face in silence. If today's story moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, or made you see something you couldn't unsee, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because the conversation doesn't end here, it's just beginning.